We're going to look at some grammar, the present perfect and the present perfect continuous. Okay, present perfect and present perfect continuous. So let's have a look at when we use these two different kinds of grammar. And yeah. Okay, so with the perfect and the present perfect continuous, we're talking about actions in the present. We know that present means like now, in this moment. But when we say the perfect, it means, yes, it is the present, but the action did not happen now, like the simple, because in the present simple, the action happens now as we speak. But with the perfect, we need to say that it happened a little bit in the past, and maybe it's still continuing to now, this moment, or it just finished. So you could see we've got two types. We've got the present perfect and the present perfect continuous. So how do I know when to use this one and not the past simple? So past simple, remember, is like yesterday I went to the beach. Last weekend I studied for my test. Yesterday I went to the markets. So this is a different type of grammar. So we have to use have with this verb. So in the perfect, we have the subject, and then you have to say have for I have, you have, we have, they have. But if you're talking about she, he, it, then you would say has. So she has, and then you would say the action. So for example, this is the present perfect. You would say, I have lived in Australia for 2 years. I have worked for this company for 3 years. So we can add the time with the present perfect. So we could say for how long, how many years, how many days. That's how we use the present perfect. So that's it. All you have to do, think of your subject, who is doing this action. So remember, if it's I have, we have, they have, you have, but if it's for he, she, it, she, my friend, Maria has, my mum, she has, or Mario has. And then the action, we have to have the ed. So for example, I have lived in Australia. And then I want to say for how long. And this is usually, as I said, your days, years. So I have lived in Australia for 2 years. I have played soccer for 10 years. Now, we can also use since. Now, what's the difference between saying for and then since? When you say for, you're showing how long that action has been happening. And like I said, usually it will be days or years. But when you say since, you're going back to exactly when the date happened. So for example, I have lived in Australia. I can use the same sentence. I have lived in Australia since 2021. You see how it's the same sentence. It's the same information. But when I say for, I need to calculate from 2021 until now is 2 years, 3 years. But if I say since, I need to say the date. So that's how I know the difference. So since, you're really talking about the exact date, and it would be maybe the month, maybe the day, which day, I have I have read this book since Monday, okay? Or I have lived in Australia since, as I said, 2021, for example. So you could say the year, you can say the month, the day, since all the time. I have been, I have worked, I have been here, yes, since 3 p.m. Yes, when you say the time, it's the exact time, since 3 p.m. I have been here since 3 p.m. Oh, I have come to class since 3 p.m. But as I said, the for is mostly you're saying like the year, as in like 2 years. You're kind of talking more like that. 3 years, 10 years, 2 months. You could also say months, but it's not like the exact date of when it started. The since is the exact date. Okay, the present perfect continuous. So I spoke about the present perfect, but now the present perfect continuous. We know the continuous is an ing, right? We looked at that last week. You know, it's your ing, like I am working, I am studying, I am going somewhere. That's what the continuous is. Whenever you see continuous, think of adding the ing to your action. But we don't have the present continuous, the past continuous. Now we have the present perfect continuous. So how do we make a sentence? Well, we start with a subject again. So remember your subject, I, you, he, she, it, we, they, or you can say the name of the person, Maria, my mom, my country, whatever the subject is, who is doing the action. And then you also have to use the verb have. So you say, I have, you have, we have, they have, or he, she, it has. But here, we're going to add been. So in the present perfect continuous, you're going to add this word been for all the subjects. I have been, you have been, she has been, it has been, we have been, they have been. And you're going to add the verb, but the verb is not in the ed. It's going to be with an ing now. Okay, so you got two different structure. If you have a look at the first one we said was the present perfect. You have the subject, have or has, and the verb with the ed. But in the present perfect continuous, you have the subject, have or has, been, verb with the ing. So two different ways. Now, what's the difference between using the present perfect and the present perfect continuous? One of them, we use it more when we are talking about a recent action, and that's your continuous. A recent action that might have just finished now, or maybe it's still continuing. So let's have a look at some sentences. Don't worry if the rules are still you're not sure the difference, but just try and remember the structure. Perfect, present perfect, subject, have or has, verb with the ed. But the present perfect continuous, subject, have or has, been, verb with the ing. So let's have a look at some questions. The first one says, Jane, how long have you been working with Adelante Africa? Now, the reason the question is asked like that is because, as I said, we use the been with the ing when the action maybe is still continuing. We know she started in the past. We're asking her, when did you start? Because how long is a question about time, when. So how long have you been working with this place? Now, she hasn't completed the action. That's why it's not a past simple question. She's still doing this action. We want to know, when did she start this action? So present perfect continuous, because the action started in the past. But in this question, how long have you been working with whatever company? Because it's still happening now in the moment, but the action started in the past. Let's have a look at number 2. Tell us what Adelante Africa, this is a charity. So if you're not sure, it's a charity company. So tell us what this company has been, what action doing? Yeah, doing. What has this company, tell us what Adelante Africa has been doing since 2010. So what has it been doing? What activities does this company do? So we know the action is still continuing. They started in 2010 in the past. So if I have a time here, this is the past, and this is now, and this is the future. So we know it started in 2010 and it's still continuing to this moment. We know since 2010 because we said the exact date, not for 14 years. Because if I want to say, how long, tell us what Adelante Africa has been doing since, has been doing for the past 14 years, right? Because from 2010 to 2024 is 14 years. So if you want to say for, you're going to say for 14 years. What has this company been doing for 14 years? Or you can say since by saying the exact date when it started. That's the difference between for and since. So good, we know the right action. We know it needs to be an ing because we've got been. So tell us what this company has been doing since 2010. Number 3, the children's home has been running. So when we talk about somebody having a business, I know running is an action where you run, right? You go for a jog, a walk, a run. But when you have a company, that's what they do. They run something. So it's an interesting action verb to use. So it just means like, how long has it been open? Like, how long has this company been running? So the children's home has been running since 2012. Can you see the since with the exact date? Since 2012. Number 4, we've also been pardon? We've also been using? No, we've got the verbs here in the top. Can you see in that box up the top? We've also been, but you're right, that could be a good sentence. We've also been using water tanks to collect rainwater. We've also been building. So a little bit of a different verb because using is fine. We've been using it, but building means that they have created water tanks. So we've also been building water tanks to collect rainwater. Since then, we've started. Yeah, started. Since then, we've started 11 more groups. So don't worry if you don't know what these words mean, because we actually, yesterday, we had the listening for, so that's what probably you missed. But it's just a charity company. That's all you need to know. So since then, we've started. Now, this is the present perfect. We've started 11 more groups. Because that's it. That action is kind of finished. They're not continuing to make more groups. We've started 11 more groups. Since she came here, she's changed completely. So she was actually talking about a little girl that came to this charity. It's an orphanage where they have kids that don't have, mothers and fathers. So she was talking about a little girl. She said, since this little girl came here, she's changed completely. So we can see the last 2 sentences that I gave you were in the present perfect with the subject, have or has, and the verb with the ed. Changed, started. There's no been in the present perfect continuous. So since she came here, she's changed completely. Okay, so that was an audio, but I thought I would do it to speak it so I can explain the grammar to you. Are these sentences that I just spoke about, are they about a period of time in the past? Are they about a period of time from the past until now? Or are these actions a period of time in the present? Which one do you think that the present perfect and the present perfect continuous is trying to tell you why we create this sentence with this structure? Which one do you think it is? Yes, B. When we use the present perfect or the present perfect continuous, as I said, we're talking about a time, an action which started in the past and up until now. So maybe it just finished the action, or maybe it's still continuing into the future. So it's not just an action in the past, because then you would use your past simple, like yesterday I went to the movies. Okay, it's not just a past simple, it's also continuing to now. And it's different to using the present simple, because the present simple is just, I live in Adelaide, I speak English. That's your present simple. I'm not just telling you facts or about my routine in now. I'm talking about an action started in the past, continuing to now, the moment I am speaking. So the questions 1 to 4 were in the present perfect continuous, and 5 and 6 were in the present perfect simple. So now you know how to create sentences in both of these type of grammar tenses. I want to have a look now with an audio. We're going to listen to 4 sentences, and you're going to write down what did you hear. Now, the pink boxes means a stress. So a stress is where do I push my voice when I speak? Okay, because we can't speak with the same voice. It would just sound too boring. So we need to say some words in our sentences that we lift up our voices. And that's what we call the intonation, or we call it the stress. It means that I make my voice high, just for certain words. Now, how do I know which words? Usually you could see how long, whenever you start your sentence with a question like, what did you do yesterday? Where did you go? How long have you lived in Adelaide? You will always lift up your voice to those kinds of words. So your what, when, where, why, who, or how long. Now let's listen to some audios and just write down the words, and you'll see that the ones in the pink are where you lift up your voice. So have a listen to that when you listen to the audio. Now also we lift up our voice, as I said, when we have questions like what, when, where, why, who, or how long. And also the most important part, the topic of what you are talking about. So if I said, what book are you reading? So what was that question about? A book. So I'm going to lift up my voice when I say the word book. Or which country are you from, Matthias? The country, that's the topic of what I'm asking you. So I'm going to lift up my voice. What? And I'm going to say country. I'm going to lift up my voice for that word and then go, are you from? You know, like I lift up my voice and then it goes normal. So lift up your voice, which is called the intonation or the stress. Have a listen to which words. So write down the full sentences from what you hear. Okay, so let's listen. So 4 sentences you will hear.
Point 18. 1. How long have you been learning French?
I'll just stop it and then I'll go back. So you can make sure you don't miss any words.
2.18. 1. How long have you been learning French?
So you should have, how long have you been learning French? So you could see that that was the part that was the interesting, the topic part of what I'm asking you. So how long? I need to lift up my voice for that. Have you been learning French? I lift up my voice because that's the topic of what I'm asking you. Okay, number 2.
2. I've been learning French for 3 years.
We'll listen again.
I've been learning French for 3 years.
I've been learning French for 3 years. So you can see I lift up my voice about the topic, learning French, and also the time, 3 years. It just makes it easy when I'm speaking to someone that they can remember the information that I'm telling them. So by lifting up my voice when I talk about the topic, whatever's the interesting part that I'm telling someone, and how long, the time. So for example, I have lived in Australia for 10 years. So you kind of like stretch your words out, 10 years. So don't say the words too fast, stretch out that word. Okay, number 3.
3. How long was it raining?
Listen again.
How long was it raining?
Okay, how long has it been raining? So how long? That's the part where we need to lift up our voice. And raining, that's the topic of what I'm asking you. How long has it been raining? So again, you can say since 7 a.m., since this morning, or for, what do you think you could answer? It has been raining since 7 a.m., or it has been raining since this morning. You could also use that kind of phrase, since 2 hours ago. And the last one.
4. It's since lunchtime.
We'll just listen again.
It's been raining since lunchtime.
Okay, it's been raining since lunchtime. So I need to push my voice at, when I say raining, that action verb, it's been raining since, and then I push my word at the time, lunchtime. That's a time, since 12 p.m. One word. At least that's how, yeah, since lunchtime. Since midday. Midday is another word for lunchtime, and that's one word. Midday. Since midday, since lunchtime. Okay, so now you know how to create the present perfect sentences. You know how to create the present perfect continuous. You know how to use words like for and since. And you know where to push your voice, the intonation. Where do we lift up our voices so that our voice doesn't sound the same and boring? Okay, we're going to listen to a few more sentences. Write down what you hear as what was said, but also write down how would you make a question with saying how long? Okay, so have a think of the question when you say how long. So for number D.
2.19. 1. It's snowing.
So I think it's snowing. So the question that you could ask someone is, how long has it been snowing? Right? So if someone tells you it's snowing, so you need to write, I know that there's no room, just write, well, they did it for you. How long has it been snowing? Now, is that a question in the present perfect or the present perfect continuous? Continuous, because it's got that word been and the action word is in the ing. So the reason why we use the continuous, because it's still continuing. It's, if I look outside the window, sorry, snowing, it's still snowing. So I just want to know, when did it start snowing? So you could also say, you could also use the present simple for that question. When did it start snowing? Yeah. So you could make that same question in the present, the past simple, or you could make it with the present perfect continuous by saying, how long has it been snowing? So really quickly, we'll do number, there's 8 of them. You're going to listen to 8 of them. But just before, let me just go back for Matthias really quickly. So, sorry, Matthias, Ariel.
Yeah.
Ariel, we're on page 21. 21. We're talking about the present perfect and the present perfect continuous. So these are actions that started in the past and are still continuing to now in this moment. So it's not your past simple, it's not your past continuous, because they're just actions in the past. But this is an action in the past, but still now into this moment. And this is how you make the present perfect. So to make a present perfect, you will have a subject, I, you, he, she, it, we, they. And then you have to use the verb have. So I have, you have, we have,
Yeah.
they have, or has, for he, she, it has. And then you have the verb, yep, with the ed. And then you might say for or since. So for example, I have read this book since last week. I have lived in Australia for 10 years. I have had this laptop for 3 years. But in the present perfect continuous, you have a subject, again, I, you, he, she, it, we, they. You'll still have the verb to have. So have for I have, you have, we have, they have, and it has. But now you have been and the verb with the ing. And you can still use that with for and since. So I have been working since 2 years ago. I have been living in Australia for 10 years. I have been studying since last night. I have been running for 30 minutes. So there's still the same actions, the same information, but it's just using 2 different types of grammar, 2 different types of structure. Because you could see the for and since, I can still use it here. So you can also do for and since. And we talked about for and since. For is more like when you talk about years. I have lived in Australia for 10 years. I have worked for this company for 3 years. And since, when exactly did the action start? So I have been living in Australia since January. Okay, exactly when did the action start? So we looked at some of these sentences, and now we're here. We're going to listen and make questions. So the first one is, if someone said it's snowing, you could say to them, how long has it been snowing? We're going to listen to the second question.
2. I'm learning Russian. How long have you been learning Russian?
So we could see that we can ask someone, if they tell us that they're learning a language, you could say to someone, how long have you been learning Russian? Okay, make sure you put a question mark. if you're writing, because it's a question, how long have you been learning Russian? Or English, how long have you been learning English?
3. Susan is working in Italy.
Try to write down the question that you would ask Susan before, because when it has that beep, try and write down the question. If she says, somebody said, Susan has been living in Italy, what question do you think you can ask to find out the time? How long?
Italy.
Sorry, working. So you could ask someone, how long has, so remember has, because when we talk about she, he, it. So how long has Susan been working in Italy?
Oh, John is looking for a job. How long is John looking for a job?
Okay, so we can ask someone, how long? This is about John, but maybe your friend told you that they're looking for a job. You could say, how long have you been looking for a job? Because you remember they started it in the past and they're still looking for a job right now in this moment. So how long have you been looking for a job?
5. They're living with Mary's parents. They're living with Mary's parents.
Okay, so maybe you know some of your friends. You could say to them, how long have they, because it's plural, more than two people. So how long have they been living with Mary's parents?
Six. I'm going to Southernses. How long have you been going to Southernses?
So if someone tells you that they're learning an instrument or doing a dance, you can ask them, how long have you been going to salsa classes? Okay, or how long have you been playing the piano? How long have you been learning whatever you're learning, whatever activity or hobby that you're doing? So how long have you been going to salsa classes?
It's raining. How long has it been raining?
So we can ask, if imagine it's raining outside now, I can ask, how long has it been raining? So remember, we use it when we're talking about a subject, which is not a person. So it, like the rain, the book, it, the phone, it, the bottle, it. How long has it been raining?
8. John is going out with Emily. How long has John been going out with Emily?
Okay, so maybe you're asking your friend, how long? Maybe they told you they're in a new relationship. They're seeing someone. They're dating someone. You can say, how long have, well, this is how long has John, so if we're talking about someone else, how long has John, or again, you can think of asking your friend, how long have you been going out? So how long has John been going out with Emily? And going out means like they're together, like in a relationship, not as friends. So when you say been going out, that's a verb that we use. They're getting to know each other. So how long have you been going out with Emily? Okay, and again, you can respond to these with saying for or since. I have been doing this for 2 years. I have been doing whatever action for 3 years, for 10 years. Or you could say since. I have been doing this action since January. I have been doing this action since this morning. I have been doing this action since I was young. Okay, so that's what we had when we talk about perfect and the present perfect.